The second half of the January 20th regular meeting of council. Let's see if we can. For our consent agenda, we have two parts: minutes of the council meeting held December 16th, 2019, and the approval of the meeting agenda. I need a mover and a seconder to accept both. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Chandler. All those in favor? Opposed?
Your Worship, would you like me?
Yeah.
Okay. Later on in our agenda package, there's your notice of motion and recommendation, 7A1. At this time, I'm wondering if it's just your notice of motion that this will be coming forward. Otherwise, I would ask that it would be removed from the agenda and put on a committee of the whole agenda where we could have a further discussion. Are you asking for a recommendation at this point in time? I see that there's a recommendation, but I don't recall a notice of motion. You're asking for it all in at today's meeting, is that correct?
Thank you, Worship. What we have done with a number of items, including an item from Councillor Greer in May, and one or two other items, I believe, from Councillor Chandler, where a councillor is able to meet the agenda with their motion, the notice of motion is provided on the agenda itself, just like all of the other agenda items. So council may make decisions on that item if they wish at this meeting. They do not need to wait until like if a notice of motion was brought up kind of live without any advance notice. So we've done that for a number of motions over the last year. So if council wishes, they can make a decision on that this evening.
I'm sorry. When it comes up, you can ask to have it deferred if you wish at that point. And if council agrees, then we defer it. All right? Any others? Is there any other issues? All right, we'll try it again. 1, 2, 3 against 2, so it carries. Right? This is what you got that? Okay, good. Delegations, we have the Broombusters.
Oh, I feel so little. Hi. Mayor Main and council members, good afternoon. I'm Joanne Sales, the director of Broombusters Invasive Plant Society. Some of you I've talked with before. Broombusters started in 2006, and it started in Qualicum Beach, but now we have all up and down the east side of Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast. We have chapters. It's been a successful thing that was seeded here, and now it has spread across the island. Why do we care so much about Scotch broom? Well, this picture I show everywhere, but as you recognize this is exit 51 from Parksville, and that's Bucker Fields right there. And that little patch of yellow there, that was a forest, and it was cut down, I don't know how long ago, 12, 15 years ago. The broom from the road moved in, and the forest is not going to grow back. That is one of the main reasons why we are so concerned about Scotch broom. Scotch broom is an alien invasive plant. It doesn't belong here. Seeds were brought here in 1850. Broom spreads rapidly in the sun. It crowds dense thickets, forms dense thickets, crowds out native plants, leads to a dramatic loss of diversity, prevents forest regrowth, is highly flammable, is toxic to grazing animals and wildlife, and takes over farm, forest, and parkland. This scene was more prevalent in Parksville before, but in 2012 there was a bylaw passed so that private properties in Parksville don't have broom taking over like it used to, but on investment properties and development properties we still see lots of broom. Broom spreads rapidly. Okay, it's an alien in our midst. A single plant, like that one in the corner, has 18,000 seeds. So what happens then is you get a clump of broom, and then pretty soon you have what we have on Inland Island Highway under the power lines, where it is solid broom. You recognize this. This is the weigh scales exit, and you can see where the broom grows on any disturbed land, which is why we have it up and down the highways. Okay, it doesn't grow in the shade, so it doesn't grow in the forest, but on any disturbed soil, broom wins. Our forests in particular are in danger for many reasons, and one of the reasons is invasive plants. Invasive plants grow faster than the young trees, and in this picture you can see the broom going from the power lines, the transmission lines, into the young forest, and the broom is growing faster than the forest itself. In addition to that problem, we have the deforestation and development, and then we have climate change, making it harder for the young trees to grow. Hot, dry summers, wildfires, and severe storms. So how bad can broom get? Okay, these are photos that were given to me by travelers from local that went to New Zealand. And you can see when broom takes over, broom and gorse, it really takes over. Okay, if you cut down a forest and you have broom nearby and you're not preventing it from spreading, you're going to end up with a broom forest. I hear of other travelers went to Croatia, said they saw the same thing, also in Brazil. It's not what we want on Vancouver Island. Broom is a woody weed. You can see how huge it can get. That's my foot there. And then you can see how long and tall it is. And this happens in a very few years. Broom strangles native species and takes over our special places. The volunteers in that corner were saving a patch of camas flowers, and the search and rescue, Aerosmith, helped us get the broom off of the steep banks at Top Ridge Regional Park, which we are very grateful. Okay, look at this photo, and you see in the corner, you see a fireman and a truck, okay? This is a huge blaze. Okay, Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. Okay, this was in Powell River. This is the full quote by the fire chief there, who started a chapter of Broombusters in Powell River because he was so tired of fighting fires started by Scotch broom. Okay, Scotch broom is a volatile flash fuel. It'll increase a wildfire's fuel load, escalate the fire's intensity, compromise fire situations, make fires more difficult to fight. And that's by Terry Peters, the fire chief. If you look at the broom on the left side here, those were pictures in Qualicum Beach. And it looks like that broom is dead, but it is not dead. That's just what happens in the summertime when it's dry. Broom forms a lot of dry branches, and it has high oil content, so it creates a very serious fire hazard. And broom on utility corridors creates an easy path for fire to travel across the island. So many of us are very upset about the fact that broom is allowed to grow on the BC hydro power lines because it would be a perfect way for fire to spread quickly. When we started Broombusters in 2006, there were two myths. One was we can't stop broom, and that's because people were doing it the wrong way. They were pulling it up, they were using excavators, they were disturbing the soil. I was told by a railroad man that the way to do it is you cut it when it's in bloom. So that's what we've been doing, and it has been working. The plant itself is easy to kill. You just cut it right before the summer, and it dies. But if you pull it up, then there's thousands and thousands of seeds in the ground, and you've disturbed the soil. So, of course, then there's new seedlings that come up. So it has to be done right, and it's not the aggressive way, it's sort of the passive way. You just get out your loppers and you just cut it, and then you keep it under control. The other myth was that broom is naturalized. That's also not true. It's everywhere, but it's not done taking over. We don't want it to take over Vancouver Island. So now communities and residents are taking action, and this was kind of in order of how they became active. And so you see Qualicum Beach is the first one, and then Parksville was number 2. In 2018, over 500 volunteers cut broom for over 5,000 hours. That's a lot of people that care a lot, and we're grateful to all of them. Now I've got pictures of Parksville. Okay, so this is the exit 51, the ramp going into Coombs, and the two parts of the cloverleaf are almost broom-free now, and this was one of them. So this is as you exit the highway going north and coming into Parksville. This was the other exit, exit 46. In the top corner, you see how much broom there was along the bank. Then in the right, you can see this, some of the volunteers after it was cut, and then a few days later when it was dry and ready to be chipped up. We don't want broom like this along the side of our highways where somebody can throw out a cigarette butt or a match or something in the summertime. This is the other part of Exit 46. The volunteers called it the Battle of Hill 46, and it became we focus on one section at a time, and this was one of the sections this summer. And so that whole cloverleaf section was cleared this summer, or last spring. Now this gorse is a unique problem for Parksville. I don't know any other city locally that has the problem that Parksville has with gorse. People mistake gorse and broom for being the same thing, but it is not. Gorse is what you would see first in that big yellow field near the resorts, and it has thorns, and it comes out earlier than the broom. Okay, unfortunately, all the nice things I said about how you cut broom, you cannot really do that with gorse. Gorse will come back if you cut it, unless you continue to cut it way down at ground level. And if there's anything that Broombusters would like to ask, of council is, extra funding, not for us, but for the maintenance and for the people who care for the land, to be able to send somebody out to keep the gorse cut down so that there's no seeds going up and down Island Highway. It's not Inland Island Highway, that was a typo on my part. So here's the Broombuster key strategies, okay, and this seems to be working. Cut broom in bloom, cut with loppers at ground level in late April, May, and do not pull, do not disturb the soil. Okay, we actually need the ferns and the salal and the grass and so on to keep the seeds from sprouting, okay, so, and the trees, because in the shade the broom doesn't grow. Containment, so you go not after the densest part of the broom, but you go to where it's here and there, and then you start to work in. And stop the spread. Create shade, preserve your trees and your ground cover. Well, so many people they'll just go in and they'll clear their land, and then all of a sudden all these invasive plants come in, and the work of caring for the land is so much more extreme. We need to keep our trees and our ground cover, natural ground cover, as much as possible. And cooperation. We appreciate that the media and the municipalities and the cities and the volunteers are all working together. So once again, this is a picture of New Zealand today, and if you look at the corridors, the transmission lines, and you can see how much broom there is, and it does not look that much different than what's going on in New Zealand. When the forests are cut down, the broom just moves in. So even though we're cutting down on, where there's people living, we need to actually work. We actually have to work to make sure that the broom doesn't get into forest land, cleared areas. So the three greatest threats to biodiversity are climate change, development, and invasive species. And unfortunately, we're the only ones that can protect our islands. And why do we cut the bloom and broom? For future generations. This is something that we inherited, and it wasn't too bad. We can't leave it in a worse state than it was. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks very much for your presentation. I've heard it a few times other years. You do a yeoman's job, I can tell you. But my question is, where you see 100 acres of broom, you can't spray to kill it?
No, in fact, I probably should put some photos that I took along, like at Cameron Lake, where they did spray, and you can see it looks like, oh, the broom is dead, and then you see it just starts to come back. It doesn't actually kill it to spray it. It kills it if you cut it. And it's a very frustrating thing, because once broom does take over, it's very hard to get rid of. That's why we want to prevent it whenever we possibly can.
Just seems like an impossible job to cut it all.
Yeah, what you can do is that the primary thing to do is to stop it from spreading. So the main thing is just to make sure that no yellow flowers bloom anymore, and then you start the slow process of moving in. So was there a specific place that you're referring to, like a developed
No, I'm just
area?
looking at the pictures there, and you have miles of broom, and
Yeah.
to cut it by hand seems like an impossible job.
Yeah, you mean like under the power lines and,
Yeah.
and so on. And areas that have been cleared, like the area that was just been cleared on Alberni Highway, you know, how long we don't know how long it's going to take for that to be developed. In the meantime, we've been clearing all the broom along Alberni Highway, but there is some there, and it's going to move in there, and it's going to spread. If that's not developed, that's going to be a broom patch.
Well, thank you very much for your effort.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for coming. It's always I won't say a pleasure per se, but I'm just wondering, when in the fall and everything, when the broom is dry, could it be pulled up at that point in time?
No, and the reason why is anytime you disturb the soil, like a single plant has 18,000 seeds or more, so the seeds are in the soil. So disturbing the soil in the fall is no different than disturbing it in the spring. The seeds will still sprout. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Joanne, for bringing this to council. It's really interesting, but I'm a little confused. So if you're cutting the bloom to get rid of the seeds, and yet the seeds are in the ground.
Oh, no,
so,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, maybe you can explain that.
Okay, you're not just cutting to prevent the seeds from falling. Only thing that stops the seeds from sprouting is the ground cover. Okay, but you're cutting it because you can kill the plant if you cut it in the spring, because all the energy is in the flowers, and you're cutting it before the drought of summer. So the plant that you cut at ground level will actually die, and then the ground cover can thrive, and then the ground cover is what keeps the seeds suppressed.
Sure.
All right, that's kind of what I thought. So those roots, which are quite extensive, could you ever plant over them again, or how does that?
Yes, you can plant over them. Certainly, trees and things like that you can plant. If it's going to be a playground, or if someplace where kids are running around, or if it's going to be, a farmed area, which is why you don't want broom to go on your farms, is because then you do actually have to turn the soil, and then you're just going to have to be pulling out those seedlings, one after another. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff, and I'm not sure who, and do we have any budget in our room that we allocate to broom removal? I know in the past that we've had city staff that have assisted at times.
If I may, Your Worship, through the councillor. In past years, we have had budget for invasive species. I don't believe this year we do have that.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. It was
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we have 3 pieces of correspondence. We're going to do them individually, and we'll move through them. First one is from the Parksville and District Historical Society, their annual report. I need a mover and a seconder to receive that annual report. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Patterson. Discussion? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually just wanted to say that this was probably one of the best reports that I've reviewed and seen from the Parksville and District Historical Society, and I'm really pleased. Like I said, it was an amazing report. It also showed a great deal of the changes and numbers and everything as well. So I'm not sure if we have anyone in attendance, but I will definitely comment to them personally as well.
Councillor Wilson, did you have your hand up? No. It is. It's a great report, and they are doing an amazingly good job. I was talking to Susan the other day, and she mentioned that they're going through their pictures. They have 4,000 pictures that they're going through looking for soldiers that passed during this First World War for us. So it's nice to have that to call on. So anyways, I need all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Second one is from BC Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Petroleum Resources, CleanBC Better Homes Program. I need a mover and a seconder for receiving that. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm wondering whether or not the RDN, the gas tax could ever be used to fund this particular rebate for residents. I notice there are a few other communities along the island that do give this rebate.
I will pass this on to our CAO.
Thank you, Worship. With our Director of Finance not here, he's the expert on the gas tax, but what I would recommend perhaps is perhaps we discuss this during budget deliberations. The gas tax does have specific eligibility criteria. It's usually applied to things like sidewalks and clean water. So I think if council would permit, we could bring it forward to budget. I don't believe we need a reso for that. We just will bring it up at budget discussions, and then council is in a position to decide if they wish to provide a subsidy or some kind of rebate program.
You have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Just wondering whether or not it's worthwhile to have staff look into what it would entail to join this.
If I may, Your Worship, I think that's what I was suggesting we would discuss during budget deliberations, but if council wishes to seek some input from the Director of Finance before that, we would need a resolution to that effect.
Let's wait till budget. Yes, please. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce sponsorship of Business Achievement Awards. I need a mover and a seconder to be received. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Discussion? Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think this is a line item, and I don't think we've sponsored them other years. So I would suggest that we maybe shouldn't start. Thank you.
Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, through your worship. Just a comment. I believe this did come forward to us last year, and we did turn it down in that case. Just we felt it was one of those things that there was money potentially better spent in different areas. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to bring anything up? Oh, Councillor Wilson, I'm sorry, I missed your hand.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps this is something we could look at next year as well, if they want to bring it forward, and we can consider it again. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then. Take a vote on this. All those in favor of receiving? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Reports. I need Assistant Chief. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this is the approval for the renewal of a confined space rescue services agreement with the Regional District of Nanaimo covering the water and utility service and wastewater departments. The Parksville Fire Department has been requested to provide confined space rescue service for the Regional District of Nanaimo. Having trained rescue team available to perform a rescue is a requirement under WorkSafe BC regulations. As the fire department has trained personnel in confined space rescue and would most likely be called, it is the natural fit for the fire department to be designated as a rescue service. Recommendation is as per council agenda.
Thank you. Well done. I need a mover and a seconder for recommendations 1 and 2. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Reports. Mrs. Weeks.
Thank you. Sorry. So this report requests council consideration for a lease agreement renewal with the Parksville Community and Garden Society for the land at 205 McVickers. The renewal term of the agreement is for 3 years, with the possibility of renewal for another 3-year period, and no other changes to the terms and conditions, and the recommendations as per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Wilson and a seconder. Councillor Chandler, discussion? I'll call the vote. Oh, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Trying to
I just want to say this is a great initiative, and I actually wouldn't mind seeing a few more areas in the city that could do this community gardening.
Okay.
If we have any lots that we could give them.
We have lots of lots. All right. I'm sorry, Councillor Patterson? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mrs. Keeler, would you give us a background on the next report?
Thank you, Your Worship. Every year, the annual AVICC, which is the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, they notify councils that the time is right to submit resolutions, and if those resolutions are successful, they are then presented to the Union of BC Municipalities in September of each year. So at this time, we always give the opportunity to council to bring resolutions forward in advance, but there is also opportunities at that event, which takes place in April, I think, if I could just find the date, April 17th to 19th in Nanaimo. There is the opportunity to raise resolutions from the floor, but what we typically will do is if council provides resolutions in advance, we tend to forward them to all of the other municipalities on the island, so there's an opportunity for those other elected officials to reach out and discuss them with you in advance. The only item that staff was aware of that had come up in discussions was concerns that this council did present to the province last year at UBCM, and that was with respect to the keeping of prisoners and what is perceived to be an inequitable funding model for that at the moment. We were advised, if council will recall, when we met with provincial reps, that this was an item that probably would be best dealt with or resolved if we were to raise it through UBCM. If there are any other items that council wishes to bring forward, they can do so at this meeting and also at the February 3rd meeting, although that's quite a tight turnaround. February 6th is the deadline, and should council wish to proceed with the resolution included in the staff report, we could then forward the keeping of prisoners item on your behalf to AVICC, and recommendations at this point are to receive.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder to receive. Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion? All those in favor? And if we're going to bring that other one up, we'll bring it up at the next council meeting.
Well, if we want to send it forward, we can have this resolution right now to go forward with the prisoner recommendation, if council wishes.
Okay, we can do that if you wish. The recommendation, the second one is that council endorse a resolution regarding regional incarceration funding models attached as attachment 2 to the Chief Administrative Officer's January the 8th, 2020 report. And point 2, that the staff be directed to forward the resolution regarding regional incarceration funding models for consideration at the 2020 AVICC AGM and convention. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion. Can somebody tell me if it did get to? I don't remember seeing it going through to the UBCM, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah. So I think we best to go back to the beginning and start it all over again, if that's the case. All right. All those in favor of points 1 and 2? Carried. All right. Policy review. Mrs. Weeks, could you please give us the background on the issue regarding special events applications review?
Yes, so as part part of the overall corporate policy review, the special event process was assessed, and as a result, staff are proposing a new special event bylaw, amendments to the policy, a streamlined application form, as well as an application fee when booking. So the fee structure for the application fee will depend on the number of attendees. So for example, under 50 attendees would be a $25 fee, attendees of 50 to 100 would be a $50 fee, and any event with over 100 attendees would be a $100 application fee. So if council wishes, we could increase or decrease the fees over a certain period or as directed by council. Other recommended fees are a water and power fee, as well as an additional washroom fee. So this will only be charged when an event with over 100 attendees is held within a 100-meter radius of a permanent city facility. And then the recommendations as per the council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for recommendations 1, 2, and 3. We'll do them all together. Councillor Greer, and seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering whether or not, this is a great idea. I think it is a great idea, but what I'm wondering about is whether our fees are comparable to other communities our size, and whether or not they're enough actually for the washroom fees when you start getting over 100 people. That's a lot of maintenance, so perhaps would a percentage amount go up based upon the number of people? Maybe some other way of factoring a cost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Answers to that? Go. Somebody reach for it.
If I may, Your Worship, we feel that there's a large range. Most cities our size do charge some kind of a fee, an administrative fee. This is really staff's recommendation to start charging. We could certainly put in any kind of fee structure that council wishes, but what we were proposing to do, or what we have discussed doing, we had a committee of staff review this, so that included the admin staff that process our special event applications, the manager of operations, and the manager of administration. And we discussed it briefly at our senior staff as well, that it will be a big change for some of the organizations that are used to paying nothing. And so what we would propose to council is that we start with this and monitor that situation for a year, and then we can report back to council on how it went. I'm sure if people are upset, they will also express their concerns to council. And what we thought this would do is start us on the path to not necessarily recovering all of the costs, but offsetting some of the costs that the special events are placing on our infrastructure and staffing. But obviously, we're certainly open to council direction on that.
Any other discussion? Councillor Patterson and Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just maybe a little clarification, because going through, the highest cost that I could ascertain would be $500. Is that correct? So that would be like an event like Canada Day or Kid Fest or...
So, and that's just for the washroom fee you're speaking of?
Sorry. So additional washrooms, yes, so $25 per 100 people up to a maximum of 500. And then application fee is strictly only $100. It
Yeah.
doesn't...
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship.
So
yeah,
would
and the
those
washroom,
all be combined?
Yeah, and the washroom fees if you're within the 100-meter radius. And yeah, it'd be up to 500. So if you have less, there could be less than $500 as well. But probably for Canada Day or Beach Fest, it would be $500 max for the washrooms.
I guess my clarification is that some events are over more than one day. So would it just be for a one-time, or would it be multiple days?
If I may, Your Worship, I believe the washroom is a one-time fee, but the water and electricity fee is per day, and that's $10, would be $10 per day.
Okay. And just a follow-up,
Please.
This is specifically for events that are booked through the city, but sporting events are still booked through the RDN. Are we looking at recouping some of those costs with the RDN as well?
CAO really wants to talk on that one, so.
If I may, Your Worship, we do receive about $170,000 a year in maintenance costs offsets from the RDN for our fields. And what we're trying to do with this special event permit process is clarify when somebody needs to apply to both organizations. So if, for example, you had an event at the Springwood Ball Field and it also triggered, it was more than 100 people or more than 50 people, you would have to apply to both. So at the moment, we don't have people notifying us or applying to us for special events that are strictly sports related. And it has created a couple of issues for us in that we're not able to weigh in on the traffic planning or even conflict management with other things that might be booked at the same time. So people who are doing sporting events on the fields will still need to go through their normal process with the RDN, but the larger events on sporting fields will now also need to get a permit from us, which is different for them. Or if they have a food truck, which in the past has been kind of random.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that's what I was just going to bring up about user fees for the people using the ball fields and so on. I get a tremendous amount of people requesting to improve the fields, to do this, to do that, and yet they don't pay anything for it. And I've discussed it with a lot of the ball players and the people that use the fields, and they wouldn't be upset to pay some kind of a user fee. So does this doesn't really cover that. Yeah, all this covers, you're trying to get some money out of if they're having a major tournament?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Greer. So this is really just for the special event permitting administrative process. So we're not looking to capitalize on the sporting events per se. We're really trying to offset some of the administrative cost and some of the wear and tear on our facilities. We've gone from, I think it's a 250% increase in the number of special events in not very many, in less than a decade. So it's becoming basically a full-time job for our admin support in operations. And we have had zero cost recovery or offsetting on that. So I think what we're trying to achieve from staff's perspective is a bit of a change in philosophy that recognizes there is a cost for the city in providing the wonderful amenities that we provide. We certainly don't want to, force people to make decisions to go to a different community, but it really is, from what we can see, every community these days is charging something to basically balance the public amenity that they're providing. A lot of the time for special events, it's not our citizens that are the only users. So it does not address user fees for like the field or things like that. Those are not covered.
So what you're saying, if there's a lacrosse tournament and they bring in a lot of people and a lot of teams, and baseball the same, we're not charging, or they're not getting a special events permit?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Greer. So at the moment, they're only getting permits from the RDN. So the RDN books our sports fields, and we're trying to, if they had, I believe last, under the current situation, if they had more than 100 people, they had to get a permit from us. Is that correct? So we're trying to make it more.
So we don't see
50.
any revenue from those tournaments?
No. Well, our businesses would see revenue, but the city does not see a direct revenue, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking for a little bit more clarification on the rollout and how people that are doing the special event application, how will they know that it's two, and how do we go forward with the RDN?
Okay, thank you. If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Patterson. So part of what staff has revamped or revised is they've created new bylaw, new policy, and new forms. So Council may see attached to this report, there are two different forms, one if it's a beer garden event and one if it's not a beer garden event. And so we've tried to make the form as user-friendly as possible. What we've done is we've attached the form to our policy so that we don't need to amend the bylaw every time we notice that there's something not working on the form. And so one of the items we wanted to monitor over this year is how easy the form is for folks to use, how easy it is for staff. There's a couple of sort of checklist items on the form that let people know what exactly they need to present. We've also clarified where council would need to give approval for something in advance. So we heard some concerns from council that if a road needs to be closed or a street needs to be closed, or if there's significant amounts of food trucks, that council wants to approve it at least the first time. So something like Craig Street Market, that was approved by council initially, and then every year it's kind of automatically approved by staff. And we heard from council that that's not really the way they want it to be. They want to be a little bit more involved for a few reasons, so they can promote the event at our council meetings, but also so that they can weigh in on the item itself or the event itself, and have a little bit more control over how our public amenities are used.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just a comment. I really think that it's great that we're looking at this. I think that a lot of events are very complex. You know, there's lots of different things, security issues nowadays that are more prevalent, I'd say, and just a lot of things like, you know, just the parking and the extra staff and so on. So I think it's great that we're taking this step. I realize that as part of the event, there may have to be a slightly higher cost in operating, let's say, but these events for most of the vendors are very worthwhile, and they can make some very good dollars during these times. So it's actually just a little bit of a drop in the bucket in some respects to what they're normally used to paying for events that may not be as successful. Thank you.
Thank you. I really like the idea of everything that's being proposed. I have no problems with it. What I would like to see, well, first I should ask is, have we had any conversations with any of the bigger user groups as far as letting them know what's coming down the tubes, or if they have any comments on it? No. So, having said that, not that I'm opposed to this. In fact, if I was voting on it right now, I'd vote in favor of it, but I would certainly like to see this deferred at least until for a meeting or so that, you know, the bigger groups that are using this have a chance to at least express their opinions and how it's going to affect them, so that we can be fair to them. This just some of these people, you know, $500, $600, $700 in fees may be the difference in a profit or a loss on this. So I just would be in favor of deferring until the second meeting in February. You may. I knew you would want something.
I know, I'm sorry. If I may, Your Worship, the only thing I'll point out there is that we do have about already just under 200 applications in the wings. We usually accept applications and then process them after January 31st. So I may be looking to the Director of Ops and Manager of Ops if a delay would negatively impact some of those applicants. I mean, I guess if they're waiting to maybe weigh in on the cost, perhaps it balances it out for them, but that would be my only comment, is that it might delay people a little bit.
I just believe it's the fair thing to do to people when you're going to hit them with a price increase, is to let them know and get their feedback on it. That's kind of my view on it. So the answer to the question is can we delay this for a couple of weeks or so? How long is it going to take? I guess would be the first question, to get out and talk to the bigger user groups. And how many are there?
If I may, Your Worship, I think we can make it work. If we delay it, when would the next council?
February 3rd.
February 3rd? If we could go to February 3rd, that would be preferable than the council meeting beyond. It's just that, as the CEO has pointed out, we do have a significant number already backed up.
Understand.
Thank you.
Can I ask it? I'll make the motion to defer this until February 3rd meeting, so that staff has an opportunity to address this with the larger users around. I need a seconder. Okay, thank you. Sure, go ahead. No, I know. He's got a question. Do you have a question on the deferral?
No, well, not on the deferral, but how are we going to contact all these people? By the sounds of it, there's quite a number.
The big users is what I'm speaking to.
Oh, I see. Okay, good.
All right, so as it was so eloquently put to me, there's no discussion on this, so we have to have a vote. All those in favor of deferring to the 3rd? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. He votes twice. Because he's by himself over there, he gets to vote 3. All right, 3 readings, special event permit bylaw 2020, number 1562. Deferring that, fees, blah, blah, blah. I need that, that's all done. Bylaws, 3rd reading is amended. Council will recall direction was provided to the staff, pardon me? Yes, my favorite discussion. Council, if you will recall, direction was provided to staff to amend the hypodermic needle bylaw that received 2 readings in 2019. The amended bylaw with changes to address concerns raised by the medical health officer is on this agenda for consideration of the 3rd reading. So I need a mover and a seconder for points 1 and 2 on this. Councillor Greer, Councillor Wilson, discussion. So these were the changes that were made from that last meeting, and we took into consideration those things that the MHO commented on that we could, and we're going to pass it through, hopefully, if we vote for it, and then we will then send it to the Ministry of Health. And it's kind of like throw it up in the air and see where it goes from there, and if they will respond to us. All right, so I'll call the vote. I did, didn't I? All right. No, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Final adoption, the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw 2019-2023, number 1552.1, amendments. We do these all at one time? Can we do them? Yeah? Or we can do them together? Let's do them one at a time. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Chandler, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 5-year provisional financial plan bylaw 2020 to 2024, number 1561. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Amendment Bylaw number 2019 number 1459.1 to amend the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption. I need a mover and a seconder. Oh, Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Next item, number 7. Development of parking at the Parksville Civic Center and Civic and Technology Center. This was to replace the parking lot from across the street as that property has been sold. Councillor O'Brien has sent me a relatively lengthy email, and I think it would only be fair that if somebody were so inclined that we might defer this until he comes back, just so that he has his input. All right, so are you making the motion to defer?
Yes, Your Worship. I wouldn't mind making a motion to defer until everyone is back, and that we also have a committee of the whole meeting so that we can have a fulsome discussion.
Well, we can have that. We can have that in the council meeting. That's not a problem. I need a seconder for the deferral. Councillor Patterson. And the vote is all those in favor of deferring? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I think that's just the fair way to do it. Yep. Yes. So that's exactly what we would do. We will just go into committee at that time so that we can take this. All right. Any member of council have a notice of motion? Any new notices of motion? No? All right. Any member of council have any new business? That's getting too easy. Before we proceed to special business, I'd like to remind the public that our next council meeting will be held on Monday, February the 3rd at 3 p.m. Or if there is, oh, no, it's done. Councillor Patterson, you had your hand up for? We could get you to speak up. But I'm teasing.
Actually, maybe I could pass this on to Councillor Wilson to give a little brief update on Parksville 75th.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's a good idea.
Thank you, Worship. I was actually going to put my hand up to do that as well. So we've been meeting regularly with the event planners, and our special committee has also met. So we're coming along quite nicely with the special committee and our activities that we are going to do. The birthday being the biggest event that we've planned. Anything else you want to add to that, Councillor Patterson?
Can we put out some of the dates of the event?
Sure, please, feel free, go ahead, talk about it. Although the newspapers have left.
I
Has
know.
left.
So if council could put it in our highlights for the June 19th, the celebration, and the one in August, and in the 22nd, and in 4th, July 4th, as we have two of our chairs in attendance. So I'm sorry we didn't get this out to the newspaper earlier, but we have quite a few events, well, the three really large major events, and they tie in a lot with the history and quite a bit of the different organizations in our community. Mayor Main already mentioned the Historical Society, looking for some of the different pictures and that with the Remembrance Day and Memorial Avenue. But the Macmillan Arts Council is also involved, and several other pardon me? In the museum. I said that, the Historical Society.
That'd be pretty close.
Yeah. So several different organizations that we're reaching out to, and I believe next week when we meet again, we'll have a little bit more information going forward in regards to a passport type program that is being looked at, that will get some information to and some feedback back from the Parksville Downtown Business Association and the Chamber of Commerce for one, and probably the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association as well. So.
Okay, all right. That's good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. There's a lot going on. I was just saying to the CAO that when our communications person comes back, that we should make sure we get this on the agenda so the two co-chairs make the presentation at council meeting once a month as to the update of where we're at, if you don't mind. Since you're here for every meeting, I figured that wouldn't be a great imposition. So I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 1C, D, and E of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to labor, the security of the property of the municipality, and land. I need a mover and a second. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? All right, 5 minutes and we're going into camera.